Hey everyone, David Shapiro here, back with AutoMuse. So, we've done parts 1 and 2. This has taken a lot of work, and I've done a little bit of work in the background just because I didn't want to bore the audience with some nitty gritty stuff. But let me show you what I've done. So first, I think it'll make sense to let me just show you what the output is, and then we'll work backwards. Just because there's a lot here, and without a guide, like a orientation, it's not going to make a lot of sense. Okay, so there's two folders that have the kind of like final fine-tuned data, and it's prompts and completions. And so if you're not familiar with GPT-3 yet, there's a prompt, which is the input, and then the completion, which is the output. Input, output. So basically what I've done is all of this goes to creating an input like this. Outline: Dorian Gray is a young man who is incredibly handsome, etc., etc. Story so far. So this is chunk number 23. The passage discusses the uselessness of art and how it is seen as a form of autobiography, etc., etc. So this was created by the function called recursive summarization. It needs a lot of work. This is probably not going to work, but we're going to see it through to the end and see how it goes. So there's the outline, which is included in every input. So that way GPT-3 knows the whole story. The story so far. So this is a summary of summaries. So basically what this is supposed to represent is what has happened in the story so far. You can see here that it's a little bit too compacted. So we're probably going to need to change that in the training data. That's okay. And then the last chunk, this is the most recent 1,500 characters of prose that was written. And so then what we ask it to do is write the next chunk. And so we're on Dorian Gray 23. So this is paired with the completion, Dorian Gray 23. So they have the same file name. But so you see here, like, the painter laughed. I don't think there will be any difficulty about that. Sit down again, Harry, blah, blah, blah. With the single exception of myself, Dorian Gray stepped up on ... the dais with the air of the young Greek martyr. Okay, so you can see where it just continues one after the other. So this has been formatted into the actual training data called novel.jsonl. And so it's all nice and compacted into JSON format, but this is like a human readable version. And I split it up this way rather than just going straight to JSON-L, so that because this is so complicated, you need to be able to see, like, okay, this is what it's actually going to look like. And I've got the fine-tune running. Let's see if it's done. Still running. Okay. So while that's running in the background, we will go over all the things that I've done. And what we can do to test this is we'll just copy paste this because we know what we expect the output to be. So once we've got the fine-tuned model, we'll do this and then put it in and see how close it is. It's going to be awful. But, because like we're basically trying to train DaVinci to write a novel in chunks from 280 samples. Okay, but first, let me just give you a little bit of background. So in the last video, a few of you pointed out that like Dracula and Sherlock were not good examples because they're Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula is ephemera, right? So it's not like a conventional novel. I think I'm saying that word right. But basically it's like it's transactions, right? It's like letters and newspaper clippings. It's not a conventional novel, and neither is Sherlock. Sherlock is a compendium. So it's like, okay, let's get 7 actual novels because that's what we're trying to do. So let's train it only on novels. So I went and got a few different books. I went and made their outlines here. So that's all the same. I split all the books up into chunks. So each of these chunks is 1,500 characters long. And then we did summaries of each of those chunks. So each of these, well, I did up to 40 because I didn't want to do like the whole novel. So we did 40 summarize the first 40 chunks of each of them. And then then we got the prompts and completions. So let me show you the scripts that I wrote to do this. So first so I've got these in order. So from the top, books to chunks, summarize chunks, recursive summaries, format the JSON-L, and then fine tune. And then, wow, excuse me, I always get hiccups when I start talking. So then after this, we'll write another script to actually use the model. But it'll probably make more sense to just show you the model on the playground once it's done. So I might not worry about that script just yet. I might just write that offline and do that in a fourth video, or pause this one and do it. Anyways, okay, so from the top, overall review, this is what we did. So this first one, books to chunks, what it does is it goes to this folder, books, it just grabs the books one at a time. You can see files equals OS lister books for file and files. Open the book, and then we use text wrap for chunks of 1500. And that generates the chunks here. And so each chunk is just going to be, it's going to begin and end on whole words. It's not going to cut the words in half. So you see in this case, it's the total length is 1559 characters. So basically it says like, okay, we're going to go closest to that console line. I think there's other settings you can do to like how wide is the console width or something along those lines. Anyways, it's a super handy dandy thing to just split up text. So use this module, text wrap. I think it's built into Python. I don't think I needed to install that. Okay, so script 1, book to chunks, just splits it up. Also, let me check the volume. Okay, yeah, because the last one was a little bit saturated, so I turned the gain down a little bit. I hope this sounds good. I've had all kinds of issues. There was a bad cable, then my computer turned the volume of the microphone down, like the levels, it was down to like 58, so some videos were quiet. I think it's okay. Anyways, sorry, quick aside. So second script, summarize the chunks. So all that this does is it says, okay, let's take each of the chunks in the chunks folder and create summaries of it. So I've got, or here, let's go open one of them. So Alice in Wonderland 14. So you see like it ends, perhaps it doesn't understand English, some children digging in the sand with wooden spades. So then let's see what the result of that is. So the chunks and summaries are 1-to-1. So every file in the chunks is represented in the summaries. And what did I say? 14, Alice in Wonderland 14. So let's go to Alice in Wonderland 14. And so Alice finds herself in a pool of tears and meets a mouse. She wonders if the mouse knows the way out and tries to ask it in English. The mouse doesn't seem to understand, but winks at her. So you see, like, it takes this whole thing and summarizes it. And so this is what I mean by in the next script where we've got recursive summaries. So like, because as you make it through the book, even a 2-sentence summary, like once you get to 40 of these, that's going to be really long. So we summarize the summaries. That doesn't look like it worked too well. That would probably require a specialized either prompt or fine-tuned model to summarize it correctly, where it's just like, okay, what is the story so far? Give it to me in 5 sentences. Other people have pointed out that maybe there's some people on, I think it was Reddit and YouTube, other techniques. There's a lot of experimentation that can be done. Sounds like a lot of you have good ideas. So I'm probably about done with this project. So if you have ideas, like please take a fork of this and try it out. You'll notice in the summarized chunks, I have got a few things commented out. It's because I had already run it against these 4 books and I added 3 more. So I just commented these out to skip them. I skipped them and then I commented it out so that way like you can see how the code was supposed to run. Same thing right here where the first time I ran it, I only did the first 10 samples or 11. My math logic was wrong. And so then I commented this out to skip it. And then this is what I did to make it stop at 40 samples. Yep. So all that this does is fill up this folder, the summaries folder. So we're moving right along. Then the recursive summaries. So this actually does 2 things. You see right here down at the end, save file. The prompt it fills up the prompt and completion folder. So basically it does a little bit of stuff to pull all the data together. All the other, like the books, the chunks, the outlines, all that is pulled together into here. So like outline, Alice is a young girl who falls asleep in a meadow. Story so far, Alice falls down a rabbit hole into a fantastical world where she has adventures with strange creatures. And then it carries on. Obviously, like the story so far, because this is chunk number 6, probably needs to be a little bit more detailed. But I bet if we go to the previous one, yeah, you see how it's 4 kilobytes? So what happened was it had this summary, and then it triggered to do the recursive summary. So it says, okay, let's take this and then write a super concise summary. Let's put these in order. So here's number 5, and then here's number 6. And I asked it to write a very concise summary, and it did. So it's like, okay, that's a little bit too concise, right? This is what I mean by like, we're gonna need to work on a fine-tuned model that specializes in writing summaries that are like 1,500 characters, regardless of how long it is. And I know that OpenAI published a blog or a paper about recursive summarization. So probably what I need to do is go review that and copy their success. Anyways, so that's the most broken section is doing these recursive summaries. And here's how that works. That summary chunk. Actually, why did I close those? Let me open these back up. So these summary chunks are stored in this variable here, summary chunk. So when you start the book, summary chunk is nothing. So then for summary and summaries, so that this list of summaries comes from this folder. So for all of these, we want to kind of inch along and then recursively summarize them. And so then if the length of the summary, when we add the next one, so accumulate all the summaries so far, if it's too long, then we trigger the summarizing the summaries thing. And so we open the file, we open the summary prompt, and we put the chunk in, and then we summarize it. And so basically the summary becomes really short. This logic is going to be the most fragile part of this project so far. So if you've got ideas about how to overhaul this, I know a few of you have already commented on YouTube and Reddit. But if you got other ideas or you want to try something on your own, please take a copy of the code and try it out. So at the end of this, once this is done running, we have the prompts and completions full. And so then I just have this really short script that takes the contents from those prompts and completions. And remember, they're paired, so the file name is identical under prompts and completions. So like if you look under Great Gatsby 17 under prompts, that one is paired with Great Gatsby 17 under completions. And that is how it knows which one goes where. So it's like there's a bird on the lawn, and I think it must be a nightingale. Come over on the canard or White Star Line. So you see where it's just like, okay, it just picks up right where it left off, carries on. So we format the JSON-L, and then I've got my standard fine-tune script. I just copy this into all of my projects. Let's see if it's done. Running, still running. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna pause the video until this is done, then we'll test out the fine-tuned model. Again, I don't expect it to work that well, but who knows? Maybe we'll be surprised. I've got 280 samples. For writing a novel, I suspect that, one, we're going to need much better summaries, like the recursive summaries. We're going to need to do that a lot better, but also we're going to need a lot more samples. This might be the kind of project that needs like 10,000 samples so that it knows the nuance of writing a novel in chunks. Anyways, let me pause the video. We'll come back once this is done and we'll test it out and go from there. Okay, so I was thinking while this was running, I wanted to do some back of the napkin math. Also, while it's still running, I just wanted to show a bunch of you ask like how much this costs. So like you see some of these big chunks are like days when I've done a lot of projects. Usually when you see these big jumps in my spending, that's because I fine-tuned a DaVinci model. But most of these only cost a few dollars. So like here for the medical question chatbot that I trained, it didn't fully work, but it was only $1.50 to fine-tune a Curie model. So this is all relatively cheap. Anyways, right now, let's go back over to the playground. So right now, the Text DaVinci O2, its maximum length is 4,000 tokens. So my rule of thumb is that back when the limit was 2,000 or 2048, that was about 6,000 characters. So that means each token is roughly 3 characters. That's a rule of thumb. That's not always true. But so let's say the current DaVinci, which is still GPT-3, has a window size of 4,000 tokens or 12,000 characters. The average word in the English language is about 5.6 characters long. I'm pulling that from memory. I might be wrong. So that is upwards of 2,100 words. So that means like DaVinci, like Text DaVinci Instructo 2, maximum theoretical output is probably 2,000 words. GPT-4 is rumored to be coming out sometime this year. So let's imagine that GPT-4 is 10 times the size of GPT-3 or has 10 times the window size. So if that's true, then we multiply that by 10. So that means GPT-4 could have a window size of 21,000 words. So let's say because that would be 4,000 characters times 10, or sorry, 4,000 tokens, because the current limit is tokens. So what if GPT-4 takes the token limit up to, let me zoom in on this. Sorry, you probably can't see. There we go. So let's say, what if GPT-4, Text DaVinci O3 comes out in a few months, and the token limit is 40,000, right? Okay, so then we take 40,000, multiply that by 3 because it's roughly 3 characters. So that's 120,000 characters, and then divide that by 5.6 to get 21,428 words. So that is, a lot of what I'm doing where I'm trying to summarize stuff into chunks of 1,500 characters or less. This is all going to be a moot point within a year. So this is all just like an exercise in futility. And then because this stuff goes up exponentially, right? Okay, it did succeed. Awesome. So let's give it a try. So this stuff goes up exponentially. So what happens in, let's see, tutor scripts. I probably need to do a reload. So what happens when, when GPT-5 or 6 has a window size of, let's say, probably like 1 million tokens, right? So 1 million tokens times 3 would be 3 million characters, and you divide that by 5.6, that's 535,000 words, right? So that's like almost Lord of the Rings that it could write in one shot. So let's say your average long novel is 100,000 words. So you multiply that by 5.6. So your average long novel is 560,000 characters. You divide that by 3, and we need a window size of 186,000 tokens in order to write an entire novel in one shot. So, all this work that I'm doing right now to try and, get GPT-3 to write a whole novel, this is an exercise in futility, because 186,000. Let's divide that by 4,000. So that's 46 times what we've got today. And since this goes up exponentially, this is probably 2 or 3 years away, and GPT-5 or 6 or whatever will be able to write an entire novel in one shot. And so then what we're going to be doing, a year or 2 from now, I won't be fine-tuning all these little chunks, breaking it down into cognitive tasks. We're going to be fine-tuning entire novels. So, all right, with all that said, let's see how we did today. Tutor scripts novel. There we go. Okay, so let's grab one of these prompts. Let's just grab Alice in Wonderland 32. And this is going to be comically bad, I'm telling you. Let's zoom out a little bit because there is a lot here. Okay, so Alice is a young girl. All right, Alice falls down a rabbit hole and has adventures in a fantastical world, etc., etc. The caterpillar asks who Alice is, and she replies she doesn't quite know. She feels she has changed several times since that morning. The caterpillar tells Alice to explain herself, and Alice tries, but she cannot because she cannot understand herself. Okay, so that's where we're at. Let's increase this to 1,000 tokens. All right, I'm going to turn the temperature down Let's just see what it spits out the first time, because this is a fine-tuned model. And also, this is not necessarily a good test because it was trained on this data. But let's see. Well, that's writing. We were on, which one did I open? Alice in Wonderland 32. So let's see what the completion Alice in Wonderland 32 looks like. And so this is again, it's not entirely fair. Let's see, different sizes in a day is very confusing. It isn't. Well, perhaps you haven't found so yet. Okay, so let's just copy paste that so we can take a look. Okay, it looks like it is very, very similar. Here's another puzzling question. Alice couldn't think of any good reason. So let's see if that is, see if that's in here. It isn't. Okay, so it looks like the story is kind of diverging just a little bit. I should think you'll feel it a little queer, wouldn't you? Okay, so it is like word for word up to a certain point. That's not entirely unexpected because this is the data that it was trained on. So let's, okay. Now here's the real test. Let's see how well this does on a brand new story. So this is really the crux of it. So let's go to the premises that I created in another project. So let's see. So we've got an outline. In a world of high fantasy, a young woman named Alicia is on a quest to save her village from a band of marauders. Alicia is joined by a group of unlikely heroes, including a daring thief, a powerful wizard, and a skilled archer. Okay, we got the four-man band. They need a fifth one if they want to hold to the mythic structure. Together, they must battle their way through hordes of enemies and solve puzzles to reach the marauders' lair. With courage and determination, they defeat the marauders and save the village. Okay, story so far. Opening. Nothing has happened. Last chunk. Chapter 1. Next chunk. All right, let's see what it says. I might need to turn the temperature up because we're asking it to be creative. Yeah. It's just like, let's just give you a bunch of spaces. Okay, we'll turn the temperature back up to 0.7. It's probably going to be super, super, super confused. It's thinking. And it unloaded my model. That's fine. Let's zoom in a little bit. But yeah, so once we get to Alicia and her uncle, yeah. Okay, so I don't think this project is going to work. Someone on Reddit or YouTube said like, oh, well, you should probably start with smaller chunks like short stories or flash fiction. That's entirely possible. I wanted to set the bar really high for myself, and clearly I did. Let's turn this down to 250, and let's turn the temperature up to, turn it up to max. I'm wondering why it just keeps outputting spaces. It's like it has no idea what to do. But yeah, so, and it unloaded my model again. Yeah, so if I were to do this over, you know, so one reason that I started where I did is because we've got Gutenberg, which gives you like a crap ton of data. So it's like, okay, well, we've got plenty of data to start with. But short stories or flash fiction would be a little bit better. 'Cause then what you do is like, you know, oh, here we go. It's actually going now. Excellent. God, zooks. Okay. Let's let this run. So this whole thing is only 380 tokens, which is not much. So let's turn this completion up to 500. Okay, let's see what it wrote so far. Alicia and her uncle Alicia, they're both the same name, stood near the window looking out into the lovely garden. It was a bright, warm, sunny day. Rosy rays of the sun were shining through the trees, making checkered patterns of light and shade on the young girl's face. Wow, this is not bad. She had a book in her hand, but she was not reading. Nothing in the world seemed interesting to Alicia just then, but then the butterflies that were fluttering about outside. Not bad. There were several of them sitting on the branches of the fir trees near the house, looking at Alicia and whispering among themselves. The little girl was quite sure that they were talking about her, and the faint spot of color came into each pink cheek as she looked back at them. Presently they flew away, and Alicia turned her eyes slowly from the fir trees to the sky, where some white and gray pigeons were floating about. She watched them until they too flew away, and then she put her head down into a cluster of bryony and honeysuckle, which filled the window space with its fragrance and shining feathery green leaf. "Gadzooks," said a voice close by. Alicia started violently and dropped the book on the floor. Here, I'll wait for it to finish. But yeah, so then, actually it might have just needed a really high temperature. Okay, it's doing next chunk. So what that tells us what we need to do is add this as a stop sequence. Okay. "Gadzooks," said a voice close to her. Alicia started violently and dropped the book on the floor, but seeing that the speaker was her old tortoiseshell kitten, she recovered herself and took up the volume. It was a large, ancient book with faint ink marks and pieces cut out of the middle, and leaves were of different sizes, and some notched as if for a paper knife. "Stay where you are," she said to the kitten, "and I'll get you a mouse." Her face lit up at the thought. The kitten lay on its back and wriggled its paws airily in the air, while Alicia opened the window, leaned out, and called to her sister. At that moment, Dr. Primrose happened to look out his study window, and he called to Alicia to come in. Then, in obedience to a whispered command, the kitten jumped off the windowsill and hopped into the study, where it vanished completely from Alicia's sight. This is getting a little weird. "Here, Master William," cried Alicia. "Master William, where are you?" I'm guessing that's Dr. Primrose. And she climbed into the study and found him on the table by the window. "Come catch a mouse for Suet." This is so strange. This is like very dreamlike. Okay, so what we'll do then is we'll copy this. So what I'm going to do is just kind of show you manually what I'll do with a script. So we say, okay, actually, let's copy this whole thing, because we will ultimately use some of this. All right. So let's switch back to DaVinci 02, and we'll say, write a concise summary of the following story. Concise summary. That temperature might be too high. See, it's making this up. Alicia climbs into the study. Like, that didn't happen. Okay, so let's turn the temperature back down a little bit. Okay, that lost some of it. That's okay. All right, but that still served its purpose of giving us a summary. So it says, Alicia is looking out the window when she sees some butterflies and pigeons. Suddenly her old tortoiseshell kitten appears and startles her. Alicia's sister calls to her from the outside, and Alicia climbs into the study to find the kitten. Okay, so then what we'll do is we'll take that summary, because that's the story so far, and then last chunk is going to be the first chunk, last chunk, and so then we'll say next chunk, and that will come back in here. Whoops. And then we'll go back to our fine-tuned model. Whoops, come back. Novel writer. Okay, so now that it's actually populated, this is going to look a little bit more familiar to the fine-tuned model. So let's turn the temperature back up to 1. Actually, no, let's leave it at 0.5, because that seemed like it was okay. Now that it might have needed to have a higher temperature to get started, because you recall it just gave me a bunch of spaces, like, I don't know what I'm doing. But now that it's got some meat to chew on, let's see what it says. This is kind of funny. Okay. Kitty, she cried. Master William sat up on the table and looked at her. He was a large, sleek black cat with a white patch on his throat and breast and white whiskers. He had a very dignified manner, and never played with kittens or even allowed them to come near him. He was very well off, having a large basket of white cotton wool to sleep on. Cotton wool? Wool comes from sheep, and a green box with holes in it for a bed, and a little white saucer of milk by his side. He was a very important person and never condescended to notice anyone but Dr. Primrose. Oh, so Master William and Dr. Primrose are different. Okay. Alicia looked anxiously at her uncle as she came into the room, but he was sitting with his back to her and did not turn round. "I've been calling you all the morning," said Alicia, taking Master William off the table, "and I found such a lovely book." What is it about?" said her uncle, turning round to look at her. "Oh, about fairies and things," said Alicia, hugging the big book to her breast. "And there's this lovely story about a princess and a castle and a knight and a dragon and a wicked witch and a good fairy. Oh, and such a lot of things." "What is the name of it?" said her uncle. "I don't know," said Alicia, who had never troubled herself about the name of the book, and who had no idea that it sorry, stuttering. And who had no idea that it had ever had any other name other than the book. "What is it about?" said her uncle again. "Oh, about everything. There's a picture of a house and a picture of a bird and a picture of a train and a picture of a cow, a picture of a boat, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. What a curious book. Where did you find it?" Okay, so clearly this has learned to write some prose. We have no idea when it's going to get to the main story, but this is a really great intro. Okay, so I'm actually feeling somewhat encouraged. So I think I'm going to pause the video. Actually, let me see how long it is. We're at 31 minutes. All right, we're going to pause this now. You've seen it work. The data's out there. Feel free to fine-tune your own model and play with it. But what I'm going to do after this, so when you come back for part 4, is I'm going to make a script that will automate the parts that I just did manually. And once those are... oh, wow, sorry. I realized that you were looking at my big face the whole time. Yep, sorry about that. So what we'll do is I'll write the script in the next video to automate the generation of whole stories, and we'll see how far it gets. All right, so with all that, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this and got some ideas. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, etc., etc. See you next time.